I'm going to try to type up this issue, but due to trembling from aggravated carpal tunnel, there's a chance that I won't be able to. Consequently, I will also make this tape. The book I bought myself for my birthday, Muslims in the Movies, looks like a pretty good read. There are certain things going on in the itinerary of the book, meaning things that are ignored, that are telltale to the status of our society in the present age, 2021, where many problems continue to persist despite having been reshuffled in terms of certain kinds of strange new boundaries that exist as a result of the pandemic, as it is called. So when I read it on the level of these people being naive rather than conspirators, unless something indicates to me that they are conspirators in the matter. And our society was hoodwinked, kept in the dark, and there's certain new parameters going on. Much of that I have had to deal with has been argued off the record with hostage takers in our society, operating behind the scenes and from above and so forth. And one of the issues that is raised in the book has to do with the idea that Muhammad Ali was made safe and rendered secular and fair to acceptable to liberals when he became less threatening in his stance. I never really saw him as threatening. Before I go into my personal memory of all of that, just wanted to say that the point that stands out is that scorn for liberalism. And what we see in our society is failure to digest that the result of removing our most effective, comprehending, and outspoken liberals was, unsurprisingly, to remove our most wise, outspoken, and understanding liberals. You remove them and they're removed. So now the only people left around to speak for them are people who are the beneficiaries of them having been removed. And of course, they speak scorn for liberalism. I think it's important to always remember that. Now, one of the issues that keeps coming up is the idea that Hiroshima was cruel and unusual punishment. I think it's important to understand that what they're doing is against innocent people in that vernacular, that idea, that theme, that thread. And I want to get very quickly to the point that you need to understand that Yoko Ono was behind the murder of the Kennedys with her gang. And the reason you need to get directly to that point is because they have cut to the chase themselves. They have closed our schools in order to accelerate the adoption of a new status quo. Now, there's two ways you can go about it. One way is to say, I believe John Lennon really died, and lie to yourself in that way. He didn't fake it. Query's all wrong about that, but Yoko Ono was behind the death in the way that Jackie Onassis was involved in the murder of JFK. And you can get a comprehensible narrative from that approach. But it's not the absolute truth, but at least you can reconcile all the pieces when you look at it that way. Because Gail Burston was an ally of Mark David Chapman, and Gail Burston is an ally of Yoko Ono. I have yet to hear a Greta Thunberg call for her arrest. So if you look at it from the point of view ever forever that Yoko Ono is a victim and bring in all of these gangs, um, you know, you're doing what Lyndon Johnson used to say about J. Edgar Hoover, and by extension, his mentor, involvement, and partner, whatever, and Adolf Hitler who got away. It's better to have them in the tent pissing out. Is it? Really? It's a question mark. But Robert Vaughn and Lyndon Johnson both played the same role. They were chummy with JFK, but they knew they were setting him up. So the Man from U.N.C.L.E. series was from the Lyndon Johnson age. Now, Cassius Clay, we called him. I loved him. He was exciting to me as a child. And Kennedy had just been done, and he changes his name, and I cried. My father was still in the family at that point. He talked to me about why Cassius Clay changed his name. Everything was changing too fast. It was hard for me to accept. I think that's one of the reasons why Willie Stargell made me uneasy, was because he came with this new movement of change that had upset the boat. Roberto was always, Matty Alou, those guys were always there, But Cassius Clay was one of the things that wavered, Muhammad Ali. And of course, that's just my personal reflections on that subject. But I'm not sure that there's much more to it than that. If you persist in believing that Yoko Ono is a victim of all of these things, you're ignoring the felony hate crimes and the murderous abuse that she has clearly instigated, and it's made her clear she is capable of, and has been for a long, long time. If you expect me to address all of the temperamental things have to do with the Beatles singing about drugs in an era where drugs were popular, and they get to, fudge due process because they're with Allah, seeking absolute truth and all that stuff. There are safeguards and protections for good reasons. You would think black people would comprehend that fact. Well, I'm not trying to bang on about anybody, People know who I think it's good to be around. They see me around. They've known me a long time. I don't hesitate to read and learn about Muslims. The one thing I picked up on my first readings of this book on the bus makes a lot of sense to me, is that individuals are nuanced. They have a lot of things that make them unique, and each person is different. And it's important to remember that, because when we're dealing with social change and schism, it looks to me like Trump and Pink Floyd's Roger Waters have been chums for a really long time. We don't need no education, tear down the schools, riots in Haiti, get, yeehaw. Listen to me. Robert Fripp and Peter Gabriel seemed a little different. Renaissance men. And I said to them, why don't you do something constructive? And we'll get around to it. They didn't want anything to do with protesting El Salvador because they were with Mr. Bitburg, Belson, the laurel wreath guy. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, but get a shortcut together and just realize that it's a fabrication, this business about them.